So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Dr. Stone. So let's start the series. The last thing Naruto Uzumaki remembered was light, a green, all-consuming radiance that seemed to rewrite the very fabric of reality. He'd been on a routine mission near the borders of the Land of Lightning, investigating strange energy fluctuations. Then, the world turned to emerald, his body stiffened, and consciousness faded into absolute silence. The awakening was not gentle. It was a cracking, a shattering of stone from within. A gasp of air that tasted impossibly pure, cold, and alien. Naruto fell forward onto hands and knees, coughing dust that had been stone moments before. He blinked, vision swimming. Whoa. The voice wasn't his. It was young, excited, analytical. Naruto looked up, his orange jumpsuit startlingly bright against a world of muted greens and browns. Towering trees, ancient and massive, scraped a sky so blue it hurt. And standing before him, holding a curious, primitive-looking hammer and chisel, was a young man with strange, spiky green and black hair and piercing crimson eyes. He wore animal skins stitched together with a kind of rough competence. Incredible, the young man said, crouching down to Naruto's level with the intensity of a scientist observing a new species. Spontaneous depetrification event, localized entirely to your body. No revival fluid detected. The catalyst appears to be internal. 10 billion points of interest. Naruto shook his head, the Hokage's instincts kicking in. Hey! Where am I? Who are you? And what's with the get up? The questions are mine, the young man said, a sharp grin spreading across his face. I am Senku. And you, spontaneous man, are in the year 5743 AD, approximately 3,700 years after every human on Earth was turned to stone. Naruto stared. He slowly got to his feet, his body feeling strangely heavy. The chakra within him, the ever-present thrum of the nine tails and his own immense reserves, felt muted. Distant. Like a river trying to flow through mud. Stone? 3,700 years. Naruto's mind reeled. This wasn't a genjutsu. The sensory input was too vast, too real. The sheer age of the trees, the absence of any human noise, no distant carts, no chatter, just wind and birds, it was terrifyingly persuasive. That's impossible. I was just in the Land of Lightning. Land of Lightning? Fascinating. A geopolitical designation from the pre-petrification world? You're a walking historical artifact. Senku's eyes gleamed. But more importantly, how did you break free? The petrification phenomenon is absolute. It requires a precise chemical compound, nitric acid in a specific concentration and medium, to reverse. Yet you just did it. Naruto looked at his hands. He flexed his fingers, feeling the familiar chakra pathways stir sluggishly. I don't know. There was a green light. Then nothing. Then I pushed. From the inside. Pushed with what? Senku pressed, his gaze unnervingly focused. With my energy. My chakra. Chakra. Senku repeated the word as if tasting it. Define it. Quantify it. It's the energy from the fusion of physical and spiritual energies. Everyone has it. Shinobi molded to perform techniques. Naruto made a hand seal, a simple transformation seal out of habit. Like this. Nothing happened. Or, not quite nothing. The air around his hands shimmered, like heat haze off a desert road. A few leaves nearby rustled without wind. But the full transformation failed to materialize. Senku's eyes widened fractionally. He pulled a small, polished piece of obsidian from a pouch. Fascinating. No visible energy discharge, but you manipulated local air pressure and created a minor thermal anomaly. Chakra. An internal energy system undocumented by any pre-petrification science. This changes everything. Just then, a massive, muscular young man with a heart-shaped face burst through the foliage. Senku. I heard a weird noise, whoah. He stared at Naruto, his jaw dropping. A new person. From the stone. And he's so orange. Taiju, perfect timing, Senku said, not taking his eyes off Naruto. This is our spontaneous revival. He calls himself, actually, what do you call yourself? Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto said, puffing his chest out slightly, the introduction automatic. Future Hokage, well, okay, I was Hokage. It's complicated. Hokage? Taiju repeated, bewildered. Leader of my village, Naruto said, a pang of homesickness hitting him with surprising force. Konoha. His friends. His family. All gone? 3,700 years gone? A leader, huh? Senku's grin turned calculating. Even better. Naruto, you've been thrust into the ultimate survival situation. Humanity is extinct as a civilization. We're rebuilding from absolute zero. We have a kingdom of science. And you represent a variable I can't calculate. A new form of energy. Will you help us rebuild the world? Naruto looked from Senku's brilliant, demanding eyes to Taiju's open, hopeful face. He looked at the primordial world around him. No ramen stands. No Ichiraku. No Konoha. Just stone, trees, and these two strange survivors. A deep, stubborn fire ignited in his gut. The same fire that refused to give up on Sasuke, on peace, on becoming Hokage. Yeah, Naruto said, a familiar, determined grin spreading across his face. Yeah, I'll help. But we're doing this my way too. No giving up on anyone. Believe it. Senku's eyebrow twitched. The enthusiasm is loud. But acceptable. First, we run tests. The Kingdom of Science was a collection of cleverly built huts, a furnace, a makeshift lab with clay beakers and bamboo tubes, and a small garden. Naruto was introduced to Chrome, a science wizard whose intuitive understanding of materials impressed Naruto, and Kahaku, a village warrior with blinding speed and strength that reminded him of a taijutsu specialist. They were all wary of him, this loud, brightly colored man who appeared from stone without explanation. Senku's tests were grueling. He had Naruto try to mold chakra while Senku observed with primitive instruments, water-filled tubes to measure displacement, careful notations of temperature changes using crafted thermometers, observations on how nearby plants reacted. Your chakra seems to interact with the local environment on a subtle level, Senku mused, scribbling notes on a bark parchment with charcoal. It's not pure thermal, kinetic, or electromagnetic radiation as I understand them. It's something else. A biological field with projective properties? The potential as an energy source is 10 billion% theoretical, but the efficiency, abysmal. Look at you. Naruto was panting, sweat beading on his forehead. He'd been trying to produce a simple chakra-enhanced jump for an hour. In his world, it would be trivial. Here, it felt like wading through tar. The world itself seemed to resist. It's harder here, Naruto admitted, frustrated. The air feels thick. Atmospheric composition is virtually identical to pre-petrification estimates, Senku countered. The resistance is either psychological or a property of the energy itself. Does it require a belief component? A communal reinforcement? It requires training. Naruto shot back. Lots of it. Later, by the fire, Naruto learned their story. The petrification. Senku counting the seconds. Taiju's unwavering friendship. The conflict with Tsukasa, who wanted a pure world without the corrupting influence of the old world science and power structures. He wants to only revive the young and pure, Kahaku explained, her eyes sharp. He sees the old world's knowledge as a poison. Naruto listened, a cold understanding settling in his stomach. He'd known men like that. Pain. Obito. Men so hurt by the old world they wanted to destroy it completely and start over. He's wrong, Naruto said, his voice low but carrying the weight of experience. Throwing away everything, all the knowledge, all the history, you don't build peace on ignorance. You build it by understanding the past and doing better. Chrome looked at him with new interest. You sound like Senku. But warmer. A bond, fragile but real, began to form. Naruto helped Taiju haul logs, his chakra-enhanced strength, even diminished, amazing the strong man. He showed Kahaku stances and pivots that refined her already formidable style. He explained the concept of teamwork, of the will of fire, to Chrome, who saw parallels in the collaborative nature of science. But the true test came a week later. A hunting party returned, injured. A massive, aberrant boar larger than any natural creature should be was rampaging near their primary source of flint. It had already destroyed one of their tool caches. We need to drive it off or kill it, Kahaku said, tightening the grip on her stone spear. But its hide is too thick. Our spears can't penetrate. Senku frowned. We could try to concoct a poison or a trap, but that takes time we don't have if it's near the flint bed. Naruto stood up. I'll handle it. All eyes turned to him. Senku's were analytical. With your chakra? You can barely heat air. I'm not going to use a big technique, Naruto said, his mind working. He'd been conserving his chakra, feeling its slow, stubborn regeneration in this world. It was like a deep well being refilled by a slow drip. But he had enough for this. I'm going to use the basics. The very first thing they teach at the academy. The boar was a monster, tusks like curved swords, eyes blazing with mindless aggression. It charged the moment it saw them. Kahaku, distract it. Taiju, be ready to pin it if I stagger it. Naruto commanded, his Hokage authority slipping into his voice. They reacted without question. Kahaku darted in, her speed a blur, jabbing at its eyes. The boar shrieked and turned. In that moment, Naruto moved. Not with the body flicker, which required too much chakra. But with pure, chakra-enhanced speed, pushing against the resisting world. He appeared at the boar's side. His hand wasn't glowing blue. A full-fledged Rasengan was impossible here. Instead, he focused chakra into his palm, not to rotate, but to vibrate, to destabilize. He slammed his palm against the boar's temple. Chakra strike, disruption. It wasn't a named jutsu. It was raw chakra application, the most fundamental form of taijutsu enhancement. The chakra pulsed into the beast's nervous system. The boar shuddered, let out a confused grunt, and stumbled. Taiju, seizing the moment, slammed into its side with all his might, not to hurt it, but to unbalance it. Kahaku's spear found the soft spot under its leg. The fight was over in moments. The boar, disoriented and injured, fled into the deep forest. Panting, Naruto looked at his hand. The skin was red, almost burned. Using chakra externally in this world had a feedback, a cost he wasn't used to. Senku was at his side immediately, not looking at the retreating boar, but at Naruto's hand. Fascinating. Localized dermal trauma. Energy feedback. Your internal energy is inefficient at transferring to the external world. The thick air you describe might be a lack of ambient chakra, forcing your system to work in a vacuum. You're not just using energy, you're fighting the entropy of an entire world. Naruto grinned through the pain. All I know is it worked. Science, huh? Senku met his grin with one of his own. 10 billion%. But your method is wasteful. Inelegant. Like using a volcano to light a candle. He looked at the forest, his mind racing. We need to run more tests. We need to understand the rules of this chakra. If we can harness it, quantify it, combine it with the principles of mechanics. Naruto felt a surge of hope. Senku wasn't dismissing his world. He was trying to understand it. To bridge it. As they walked back, Chrome buzzing with questions about the chakra vibration, Kahaku looking at him with renewed respect, Naruto felt a familiar purpose solidify. This wasn't his world. His world was lost to time. But here were people who needed help, who were fighting to rebuild, to reclaim humanity. There was a villain who wanted to dictate a future of ignorance, just like the villains of his past. The stone world needed a Hokage's will. And maybe, just maybe, it needed a ninja's heart and a scientist's mind to truly heal. That night, under stars undimmed by any artificial light, Senku presented a new schematic. It wasn't for a motor or a radio. It was a rough, conceptual diagram of a glove. A focusing apparatus, Senku explained, his crimson eyes reflecting the firelight. If chakra is a diffuse energy that resists projection, we use science to give it form. We use shaped channels, resonant materials, we help you punch above your weight. Naruto looked at the drawing, then at Senku, then at the eager faces of their small, nascent kingdom. The journey of 1,000 miles began with a single step. Theirs began with a crack of stone, a spark of chakra, and 10 billion% of determination. The saga of science and shinobi had truly begun. Chapter 2, The Entropy of Faith. The days following the boar incident settled into a new, feverish rhythm. For Naruto, the stone world was a training ground more brutal than any devised by Kakashi or Jiraiya. Every action, every scrap of chakra, had a tangible cost. His legendary stamina, once near infinite, now felt like a shallow pond under a relentless sun. Senku's focusing apparatus was their primary project. The lab hut became a hub of experimentation, filled with the smells of heated clay, crushed minerals, and Senku's constant, muttered calculations. The feedback trauma suggests a recoil effect, Senku explained, examining Naruto's still reddened palm under a polished crystal lens. Your energy attempts to project, meets resistance, and rebounds. We need a waveguide. Something to channel the impulse cleanly away from your body. Chrome scurried around, presenting various ores. This one from the riverbed shimmers when you hold it, Naruto. And this magnetite stuff twitches. Naruto would hold each sample, push a minuscule thread of chakra into it, and report the sensation. Most were inert. Some, like a specific deep blue river stone, grew warm. A piece of dark, fibrous wood from an ancient-looking tree seemed to absorb the chakra, leaving him feeling curiously drained. Insulator versus conductor, Senku noted, scribbling furiously. Fascinating. Your chakra interacts with specific molecular structures. It's not magic. It's a physics we haven't mapped yet. The process was agonizingly slow for Naruto. He was a man of action, of explosive Rasengans and armies of shadow clones. This meticulous, granular testing felt like trying to paint a masterpiece with a single hairbrush. His frustration simmered, often quelled only by Taiju's boundless optimism or Kahaku's pragmatic challenges to spar a welcome return to physical language he understood. Her speed was still breathtaking. Without chakra, she moved with a predatory efficiency that forced Naruto to rely on fundamentals. He taught her the leaf concentration exercise, not to build chakra, but to hone her already superhuman focus. Imagine your energy not in your gut, but in the sole of your foot, he instructed as she tried to climb a tree. A tiny point of grip. Kahaku, sweating and determined, glared at the bark. Energy, point, she took a step, then another. On the third, her foot slipped. She landed gracefully, scowling. It's impossible. There's no energy there. Yes, there is. Naruto insisted. It's just different. It's your muscle control, your balance, your will. That's all chakra is, at the start. Senku, observing from a bench where he was whittling a prototype glove form from hardwood, paused. Will as a component. A cognitive catalyst. 10 billion% unscientific, and yet, the placebo effect can produce measurable physiological changes. Could belief be the primer that lowers the energy threshold for chakra manifestation? Naruto threw his hands up. I don't know about primers. I just know you gotta believe you can do it. It was during one of these sessions that the first true clash of ideologies occurred. Gen, the mentalist, arrived with a supply run from a nearby revived village. With his sharp eyes and sharper tongue, he took one look at the proceedings and saw not science, but a golden opportunity. My, Gen purred, his smile serene and calculating. A new energy source. And a wonderfully charismatic, if loud, pioneer. Naruto, dear, have you considered the theatrical potential of your chakra? Naruto blinked. Huh? What Gen means, Senku said flatly, not looking up from his carving, is that he wants to use it to awe and control people. To build a religion. A framework of belief, Gen corrected smoothly, waving a hand. Science is so terribly dry for the masses. They crave wonder. Mystery. A story. You, emerging from stone like a demigod, wielding unseen power, we could position you as a prophet of the new world. It would unify people under the kingdom of science far more efficiently than lectures on sulfa drugs or cement. A cold knot formed in Naruto's stomach. He'd been used before. He'd been hated, feared, and worshipped for the power inside him. The idea of deliberately crafting that worship made him sick. No, he said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet but firm. Oh, but think of the efficiency. Gen pressed. Tsukasa offers purity and strength. We could offer divine mandate. A single demonstration, staged correctly. I said no. Naruto's voice cracked like thunder. A pulse of raw chakra, unfocused and angry, erupted from him. It didn't manifest as light or force, but as a pressure. The fire in the pit guttered. Everyone in the clearing, Senku, Chrome, Kahaku, Taiju, Gen, flinched, a primal, instinctive reaction to a predator's sudden growl. Dust lifted in a perfect circle around Naruto's feet. The silence that followed was profound. Naruto breathed heavily, reining in the flare. He looked at Gen, his blue eyes hard. I spent my whole life fighting people who used power and lies to control others. I'm not gonna become one. I'm not a god or a prophet. I'm just a guy who's good at not giving up. We build this kingdom on the truth. On what people can see, and learn, and do for themselves. Believe it. Gen studied him, his playful mask gone, replaced by genuine assessment. He saw not just power, but an immovable principle. He sighed, a real one. Ah. A true believer in people. How dreadfully inconvenient for my strategies. Senku finally looked up, a faint smirk on his lips. Told you he'd be a terrible figurehead. Too honest. 10 billion%. He held up the carved wooden glove. It was crude, with a groove along the palm and channels carved into the fingers. But his honest energy has potential. Naruto. Let's test version 1. The test site was a clearing away from the huts. Senku had set up a target, a thick slab of deadwood. The principle is acoustics, Senku explained, securing the wooden glove to Naruto's right hand with leather straps. Chakra vibrates. It causes disruptive resonance. This glove has channels carved to direct the vibrational wave forward, based on the patterns you described when you disrupted the boar. Think of it as a megaphone for your punch. Naruto flexed his hand in the contraption. It was clunky, heavy. Feels weird. Science often does. Now, channel your chakra. Not to explode, but to vibrate. Focus it through the channels. Naruto took a stance, facing the target. He closed his eyes, seeking the familiar chakra flow. He pushed it down his arm, into his palm. The glove began to hum, a low, almost subaudible thrum. The wood grew warm. He stepped forward and thrust his palm out, not striking the wood, but stopping an inch short. Thumb. The sound was deep, visceral. The air between his palm and the target rippled. The surface of the deadwood splintered, not with a clean hole, but with a spiderweb of cracks radiating from a central point. Sawdust puffed out. Naruto stared, awed. It was a fraction of a Rasengan's power, but it was focused. Efficient. The feedback to his arm was a dull ache, not a burn. Measurement. Senku barked. Chrome dashed forward with a knotted string, measuring the diameter of the cracked area. Kahaku examined the depth. It's like a hammer blow, but from a distance. Chrome exclaimed, his eyes shining. A science hammer. A concussive wave, Senku corrected, but he was grinning fiercely. Efficiency increased by an estimated 300%. Not bad for version 1. But the wooden conduit is already showing stress fractures. We need a better material. Something that resonates well with chakra, but is durable. Naruto pulled off the glove, examining his palm. Only a slight redness. The science had protected him. It had augmented him. A slow, dawning respect warmed his chest, deeper than any camaraderie forged in battle. Senku hadn't tried to diminish his power or exploit it. He'd tried to understand and improve it. Thanks, Senku, Naruto said, uncharacteristically solemn. Senku shrugged, taking the glove to examine the fractures. Don't mention it. A new energy source is the ultimate scientific puzzle. You're just a very complicated battery. But the success drew attention they didn't want. 2 days later, while foraging for specific reeds Senku wanted for cellulose experiments, Naruto and Kahaku were ambushed. Not by a beast, but by men. They dropped from the trees, 5 of them, moving with a disciplined, predatory silence that screamed training. They wore mismatched animal hides and wielded sharpened stone spears and clubs. But their eyes were the most telling, cold, fanatical, and locked onto Naruto. The orange one, their leader, a scarred man with shaved head, grunted. The anomaly. Tsukasa-sama's orders, capture for study. Eliminate if resistance is extreme. Kahaku instantly fell into a guard position, spear ready. Tsukasa scouts. Naruto, they're from the Empire of Might. Naruto fell into his own stance, heart pounding not with fear, but with a grim recognition. This was it. The first true conflict. Not against nature, but against a human ideology that saw him as a threat. I don't want to fight you guys, Naruto said, his voice carrying the weight of a Hokage's plea. We don't have to be enemies. The old world is poison, the leader spat. Your very existence is a relic of its corruption. You will be purged. They attacked in unison. Not as a mob, but as a team. 2 went for Kahaku, their movements efficient, aiming to pin the known threat. The other 3 lunged at Naruto. Naruto's instincts screamed. Substitution. Shadow clone. But the chakra for those was too costly, too slow in this dense world. He had only the basics. He ducked a spear thrust, sidestepped a club swing. His body moved with honed muscle memory, but he felt sluggish. These men were fast, enhanced by Tsukasa's ideal of perfect primitive humanity. One grazed his shoulder with a stone knife, drawing a line of fire. Kahaku was a whirlwind, disarming one man with a sharp twist of her spear, but the second tackled her, using brute strength to bear her down. Naruto saw red. Not the Nine-Tails rage, but the protective fury of a comrade in danger. He couldn't waste time. As the leader lunged for a final spear thrust, Naruto stopped trying to be a shinobi of the hidden leaf. He became a brawler from the streets of a dead world. He let the spear tip come, twisting at the last second so it tore through his sleeve instead of his flesh. He stepped inside the man's guard, his left hand clamping on the spear shaft. His right hand, bare, flew up in a palm strike aimed at the man's chest. But he didn't just strike. He pushed. Not with vibration, but with raw, unshaped chakra, a desperate, brute force expulsion. Whomp. It was nothing like the focused wave of the glove. It was a muffled explosion of air. The leader's eyes bulged as he was thrown backward as if hit by a falling tree, crashing into a thicket, gasping for breath, his sternum undoubtedly bruised. The other 2 attackers froze, stunned by the invisible force. Naruto stood panting, his right arm screaming in agony from fingertips to shoulder. It felt dislocated, on fire from the inside. He'd blown a fuse in his own system. But the display had the effect. The 2 men looked from their wheezing leader to Naruto's blazing blue eyes, which now held a promise of volcanic retribution. Run, Naruto growled. They ran, dragging their leader with them, vanishing into the forest. The moment they were gone, Naruto's knees buckled. He clutched his right arm, teeth gritted against a scream. Kahaku was at his side in an instant, having knocked her assailant unconscious. Naruto. Your arm. "Es fine," he gasped. "Just overdid it. Don't tell Senku. He'll give me a 10 billion% lecture." But of course, Senku had to know. Back at the lab, as Kahaku and Chrome applied a poultice to the swollen, angrily red limb, Senku conducted a furious examination. He was not angry about the fight, but about the damage. Idiot. Senku snapped, his usual cool evaporated. You bypassed every developing safety protocol. You forced a DC current through an AC waveguide. You nearly cooked your own nervous system. Look at these micro tears. He pointed to the discolored pathways along Naruto's veins. They had Kahaku, Naruto tried. And you had a brain. Which you failed to use. Senku took a deep breath, forcing his composure back. This is the cost. This is the entropy. Your chakra isn't free. In this world, its misuse doesn't just tire you. It breaks you. Permanently. Do you understand? Naruto looked at his ruined arm, at the genuine fear behind Senku's anger. He'd seen comrades fall before. But this was different. This was his own power-turning traitor. He'd never felt so fragile. Yeah, he whispered. I understand. Senku's expression softened a fraction. Good. Then we adapt. Version 2 of the glove needs to be a regulator as much as a focus. A governor on your engine. We need a material that can store a charge, then release it safely. Chrome. Yes, Senku. That deep blue river stone. The one that grew warm. We're mining it. We're calling it chakra conductive or for now. CCO. On it. As Chrome rushed off, Senku looked back at Naruto. Rest. Heal. Your body needs to recover the energy it just wasted. Your chakra seems linked to your physical vitality here more than ever. Science can give you a tool, but it can't give you more fuel. That comes from you. That night, under the same endless stars, Naruto sat alone by the river, cradling his throbbing arm. The confidence he'd awoken with was gone, replaced by a profound vulnerability. He was a fish out of water, a relic, a danger to himself and others. A footstep sounded on the gravel. It was Jen, holding 2 cups of simple herbal tea. He offered one silently. Naruto took it. Here to convince me again? No, Jen said, sitting beside him with a sigh. I'm here to apologize. And to understand. He sipped his tea. You rejected a path of easy power today. Twice. Once with my scheme, once in that fight. You chose the harder, more painful way. Why? Naruto stared into his cup. Because the easy way, it always leads to the same place. To people getting hurt. To loneliness. I know what it's like to be on the bottom, to have everyone see you as a monster or a tool. I won't make anyone else feel that way. Even if it's harder. Jen was quiet for a long time. Tsukasa sees the old world science as you saw that boar. A monstrous, corrupting force to be destroyed for the safety of the new world. But you see it as Senki does. As a tool. One that can be used well or poorly. Your chakra is the same. It's just power, Naruto said. It's what you do with it that matters. A terribly simple philosophy, Jen murmured. And yet, witnessing you today, I find it 10 billion% compelling. He finished his tea and stood. Heal quickly, loud one. The kingdom of science needs its stubborn heart. And I believe it may need its fist, too, before this is over. As Jen left, Naruto looked up at the Milky Way, a river of light his ancestors had also seen. He wasn't home. But he had a place. He had people who saw him not as a container for a beast, not as a savior or a demon, but as Naruto. A complicated battery. A terrible figurehead. A friend. He clenched his good hand. The pain was a lesson. Science wasn't the opposite of his ninja way. It was its partner. A guide rail for his power. A way to protect others without destroying himself. Somewhere out there, Tsukasa was learning of his existence, of this anomaly. A clash was coming. Not just of fists, but of visions for the future. Naruto Uzumaki would be ready. Not with the unchecked power of a Jinchuriki, but with the disciplined strength of a Hokage, sharpened by the ruthless, beautiful logic of science. Chapter 3, The Resonance of Blue Stone. Pain, Naruto discovered, was an excellent teacher. The fire in his arm from the chakra backlash was a constant, grinding reminder of the stone world's rules. His body, which had shrugged off broken bones and pierced organs in his own time, now treated this internal trauma with a profound fragility. Healing was slow, tied not just to his chakra but to his overall vitality, to good food, rest, and a lack of stress, all of which were in short supply in a primordial survival camp. Senku had him on light duty, grinding minerals with his good arm, tending the small salt garden, and most crucially, acting as a living sensor for Chrome's mining expeditions. The chakra conductive or CCO was their new obsession. The riverbed site where Chrome had found the initial sample was excavated, revealing a vein of the deep blue stone running through a layer of granite. It wasn't abundant, but it was enough. Naruto's role was simple: hold a piece of the raw or chrome chiseled free and gauge its resonance. This one feels fuzzy, Naruto said, closing his eyes as he held a rough chunk. A faint, almost magnetic tingle ran up his good arm. Like a bee buzzing in a jar. Excellent. Chrome crowed, marking the spot on the rock face. That's the third high-resonance sample from this section. The fuzziness must mean it's got more of the conductive stuff. The conductive stuff being an as-yet unnamed mineral with a crystalline lattice sympathetic to chakra frequency vibrations, Senku said, descending into the pit with a basket. He'd been analyzing the ore's physical properties. It's not a power source. It's a transducer. It converts your biological chakra field into a more structured, projectable waveform. Think of it as turning your chaotic shout into a clear, focused note. Naruto handed him the ore. So, the glove wasn't wrong. It was just made of the wrong kind of wood. Exactly. The wood dampened and fractured. This, Senka hefted the blue stone, his crimson eyes alight, this will amplify. The next week was a blur of meticulous craftsmanship. Kahaku, with her preternatural precision, used a bow drill and crushed diamond dust to shape the blue ore into small, flat hexagonal tiles. Senku designed a new glove substrate, not from solid wood, but from layered, boiled leather, cured for flexibility and strength. Chrome worked on the adhesive apine resin and charcoal composite to fix the tiles into the palm and finger channels. Naruto watched, his injured arm in a sling, feeling a strange mix of awe and impatience. This was the antithesis of shinobi craft. A master toolsmith in Konoha would have used chakra-infused metals, sealing formulas applied with brushstrokes, finishing a prototype in hours. Here, every step was a voyage of discovery, a battle against raw nature. It was humbling. Taiju, ever the emotional bedrock, noticed his frustration. It's amazing, isn't it, he said one evening as they watched Senku painstakingly align the sixth blue tile. In the old world, we just order this from a factory. Here, we're building the factory, the tools, and the science, all from scratch. It's like, we're not just making a glove. We're making the idea of the glove. Naruto managed to smile. Taiju's enthusiasm was infectious. Yeah. Guess I'm used to things being faster. But this way, you know it, Taiju insisted, his eyes earnest. You know every strap, every stone, every drop of resin. When you use it, it won't just be a tool. It'll be a part of the kingdom of science. A part of all of us. The words struck a deep chord in Naruto. The will of fire wasn't about powerful tools, it was about the bonds between those who used them. This laborious, communal creation, it was Konoha's spirit, reborn in leather and stone. Finally, the day arrived. Chakra Focusing Gauntlet, version 2, Senku announced, holding up the finished product. It was a formidable-looking piece of kit. The leather was dark and tough, the blue CCO tiles inset along the palm and the backs of the knuckles, connected by fine grooves filled with a reflective mica paste Senku called a waveguide channel. Don't get excited, Senku cautioned as he helped Naruto strap it onto his healed, but still tender, right hand and forearm. This is a test of the apparatus, not a demonstration of power. We are measuring waveform coherence, energy transfer efficiency, and feedback dampening. Your objective is to produce a stable, sustained resonance for 3 seconds. Understood? Yeah, Naruto said, flexing his fingers. The glove fit perfectly, the weight of the blue stone feeling strangely comforting, like a grounded anchor. 3 seconds. Got it. The entire kingdom of science, all dozen of them, gathered at the test clearing. The air crackled with anticipation. Naruto took his stance before a new, thicker target log. He closed his eyes, reaching inward. The well of his chakra was deeper now, replenished by rest, but it was still a cautious pool. He drew a thread of it, careful and slow, and pushed it down his arm. The difference was immediate and profound. In the wooden glove, his chakra had felt trapped, thrashing against the walls. In this gauntlet, the energy flowed. It slipped into the channels, humming as it passed over the blue CCO tiles. The tiles themselves glowed with a soft, internal azure light, not blazing, but pulsing gently in time with his heartbeat. A low, pure harmonic filled the air, like a giant crystal glass being lightly traced. Resonance achieved. Senku whispered, hunched over a crude seismograph made of a suspended stylus and soot-covered bark. Waveform is coherent. Minimal chaotic scattering. Naruto held it, the 3 seconds feeling like an eternity of controlled power. He could feel the energy wanting to leap, to explode, but the gauntlet shaped that desire, turning it into a poised potential. At the 3-second mark, he released. He didn't strike. He simply opened his palm toward the target and let the shaped energy go. Voo. It was a sound of purpose, not violence. A visible pulse of distorted air, shimmering with a hint of blue, shot from his palm. It struck the center of the log. The effect was not an explosion, but a precise disintegration. A cylindrical column of wood, 6 inches in diameter, simply turned to fine, damp sawdust and blew out the other side, leaving a clean, smooth-edged hole. Silence. Then, chaos. Chrome whooped, jumping into the air. Taiju bellowed with joy. Kahaku's eyes were wide with warrior's appreciation. Gen clapped slowly, a genuine smile on his face. My. Not a god, but certainly a very effective craftsman. Naruto stared at the hole, then at the gauntlet. The blue light was fading. His arm felt fine. A little tired, a warm sensation, like after a good workout. No pain. No backlash. The energy had been focused, directed, and released with an efficiency that felt almost right. Senku was already at his side, checking the gauntlet seams, feeling the temperature of the tiles. Minimal thermal buildup. No structural stress on the conduit. Feedback to the user reduced by an order of magnitude. He looked up at Naruto, and for the first time, Naruto saw unguarded triumph in the scientist's eyes. Success. 10 billion%. We have harnessed it. The victory was short-lived. That very night, their lookouts reported increased signs of Tsukasa's scouts. They were getting closer, bolder. The encounter with Naruto had not deterred them, it had marked their location as a high-value target. They're not just looking for us anymore, Kahaku reported grimly at the council around the fire. They're looking for him. They're observing, probing our defenses. They know about the strange power. Senku's face was set in hard lines. We have two advantages. First, they don't understand chakra. They fear it as an unknown. Second, we now have a tool to shape that unknown. He looked at the gauntlet, which lay on the central log like a sacred artifact. But one tool isn't an army. We need to escalate our scientific revival. We need communications. We need better defenses. A plan formed, born of desperation and scientific ambition. Senku had identified a deposit of zinc and copper or a day's journey to the east. With it, they could create the first stone world batteries and, eventually, a primitive telegraph system to coordinate with other revived allies. But the deposit was deep in a canyon, a perfect location for an ambush. It's a risk, Senku admitted. But calculated. We need those metals. And we need to test the gauntlet in a true defensive scenario. I'll go, Naruto said immediately. We all will, Kahaku countered. You're the spearhead, but you're not a one-man army. Not here. Senku nodded. A balanced team. Naruto and Kahaku as forward defense and extraction. Chrome and I for mineral identification and processing. Taiju for brute force labor and morale. Gen, he glanced at the mentalist. For assessing the human terrain. Gen gave a shallow bow. To watch for the lies in the landscape. Of course. The journey to the canyon was tense. Every rustle in the undergrowth seemed like a potential attacker. Naruto, wearing the gauntlet openly now, felt its weight as both a comfort and a responsibility. He was no longer just a survivor, he was a weapon they were betting on. The canyon was a deep, jagged scar in the earth, lush with ferns and mist. The ore vein was a discolored streak on the northern wall. As Taiju and Chrome began setting up ropes and baskets for mining, Senku immediately started directing where to chip samples. Naruto and Kahaku took up positions on opposite sides of the worksite, senses straining. The attack came not from the ground, but from above. There was a whistle, then a thud. A heavy stone, shaped into a crude bola, slammed into the ground between Senku and Chrome, its ropes tangling around their equipment. Ambush! Kahaku yelled. Figures emerged from the cliffs above. 8 of them. More disciplined than the last group. Among them, Naruto saw the scarred leader he'd injured, his expression one of cold vengeance. But in the center stood a new figure, a tall, stern-looking woman with her hair in a tight bun, observing the scene with analytical detachment. She held no weapon, but her presence commanded authority. Yukio, Gen muttered, his voice low with uncharacteristic tension. Tsukasa's strategist. A former maritime self-defense force officer. She doesn't miss a thing. The orange anomaly, Yukio's voice carried, clear and calm. And the scientist. You will come with us. Tsukasa-sama wishes to understand your corruption, and if possible, purify it. Yeah, that's not happening. Naruto shouted, stepping forward, his gauntlet fist clenched. The blue CCO tiles glimmered in the dappled canyon light. Yukio's eyes flicked to the glove. A device. So, the power is not innate? It requires a crutch of the old world's artifice. She made a subtle hand gesture. For scouts descended on ropes with terrifying speed, 2 heading for Senku and Chrome, 2 for Taiju. 2 more archers remained on the ledge, aiming stone-tipped arrows at Kahaku and General the scarred leader, and another warrior dropped directly in front of Naruto. It was a perfect tactical pincer, isolating and overwhelming each target simultaneously. Naruto moved. He didn't charge. He flowed. The gauntlet hummed to life as he drew chakra. This time, he didn't try for a single blast. He remembered Senka's lesson, efficiency. As the first warrior lunged with a spear, Naruto sidestepped and slapped the haft with his gauntlet hand. A tiny, focused pulse of chakra vibrated down the wood. The spear didn't break, it simply became impossible to hold, jerking from the warrior's grip like a live eel. The second, the scarred leader, swung a stone axe. Naruto ducked under and planted his palm on the man's armored chest. Not a disruptive wave, but a concussive push. The air thumped. The man was shoved back 5 feet, stumbling but not down, his breath knocked out. It was control. Beautiful, precise control. He was defending, not destroying. But he was only one man. He heard Taiju roar as he grappled with 2 attackers. Saw Chrome trying to shield Senku with a mining basket. An arrow whizzed past Kahaku's head. Yukio watched, her brow slightly furrowed. The anomaly was using its power with a restraint and tactical acumen she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't a wild beast, it was a soldier. Naruto knew they were losing. He had to break the pattern. His eyes met Senku's across the chaos. The scientist, crouched behind cover, didn't look afraid. He looked expectant. He pointed sharply at the canyon wall above the archers, then made a throwing motion. Understanding flashed. Create a diversion. Change the battlefield. Naruto disengaged, leaping back. He poured more chakra into the gauntlet, feeling the harmonic rise to a keen whine. He didn't aim at the people. He aimed at the cliff face above the 2 archers. He unleashed a full-powered, focused wave. Vom crack. The blue-tinged pulse struck the weathered rock. It didn't explode. It vibrated. A huge section of the cliff face, loosened by millennia of erosion and now subjected to intense resonant frequency, sheared off with a monstrous groan. A cascade of boulders and dust thundered down between the archers and the rest of the battle, cutting the canyon floor in 2 with a roaring, impenetrable curtain of debris. The effect was instantaneous. The attackers on the ground froze, momentarily deafened and blinded. The archers were isolated. The tactical cohesion shattered. Now! Retreat to the east path. Senku commanded, already moving. They didn't need telling twice. Taiju grabbed Chrome. Kahaku covered General Naruto brought up the rear, his gauntlet still humming, daring any pursuer to break through the dust cloud. They ran until the canyon was far behind, collapsing in a hidden grove. They were battered, but all present. Senku was the first to speak, looking at Naruto's gauntlet. The blue tiles were dark, one of them webbed with a hairline crack. Overload. You pushed it past its sustainable threshold. But, a fierce grin spread across his face. The tactical application was 10 billion% correct. You used science. You used the environment. You didn't just fight with power, you fought with your brain. Naruto, breathing heavily, looked at the cracked tile. A cost, but an acceptable one. They had escaped. Together. Yukio would report back to Tsukasa. They would know more now. The anomaly was not just powerful, it was intelligent, and it was protected by cleverness. That night, as Senku began sketching designs for a communication network based on the small sample of zinc or chrome had snatched, Naruto sat polishing the cracked CCO tile. Kahaku sat beside him. You held back. You could have hurt them more. Hurting people is easy, Naruto said quietly, echoing his younger self to Nagato. Protecting your friends without killing, that's the hard part. That's what being strong really is. Gen listened from the shadows, his mentalist's mind recalibrating. Tsukasa offered a pure, strong world built on a foundation of slaughter. Senku and Naruto offered a difficult, messy world built on protection and understanding. The contrast could not be starker. And for the first time, Gen felt no ambiguity about which story he wanted to help tell. The kingdom of science had been tested. Their new power had been measured. And in the echoing canyon, a new truth had resonated: they were no longer just survivors hiding from the empire of might. They had become a faction. A faction with a heart, a mind, and now, a focused, resonant will. The blue stone had spoken. And its message was one of defiance and of hope. Chapter 4, The Circuit of Will. The cracked CCO tile was a monument on Senku's workbench, a reminder of both triumph and limitation. The kingdom of science had crossed a threshold, they were now active players in the stone world's Cold War, and the cost of engagement was etched in blue stone. The fracture follows a crystalline flaw, Senku explained, using a shard of obsidian as a micropick. The resonance frequency is incredible, but the structural integrity is 10 billion% lacking. We need an alloy. A composite. Chrome, his head bandaged from a glancing blow in the canyon, frowned. An alloy? Mixing stones? Not stones. Metal. Senku's gaze was fixed on the small, dull gray lumps of zinc and copper or they'd retrieved. The next leap isn't in better chakra conductors. It's in the supporting architecture. We need circuits. We need controlled flow. Naruto listened, his right arm sore from the sustained chakra output. The concept of circuits was familiar, chakra pathways in the body were a kind of biological circuit. But translating that to metal and stone felt alien. He watched Senku draw schematics in the dirt, lines connecting the CCO tiles to copper wire, to a zinc cell, to a ground. You're trying to give it a nervous system, Naruto realized aloud. Senku's head snapped up. An apt, if unscientific, analogy. Yes. The gauntlet is a dumb transducer. It takes what you give it and shapes it one way. I want to build a smart system. One that can store a trickle of chakra, regulate its flow, and allow for multiple outputs. A jutsu apparatus. The word jutsu hung in the air, a ghost from Naruto's world given flesh by Senku's ambition. The project, dubbed the Chakra Regulation Module, CRM, became their all-consuming focus. It required parallel leaps in technology. They needed reliable wire, which meant drawing copper, a process that required better furnaces, bellows, and crucibles. They needed sulfuric acid for the zinc-copper batteries, which meant identifying and processing sulfur deposits. Each step was a branching tree of prerequisite discoveries. Naruto found his role evolving. He was less a test subject and more a diagnostic tool. As Chrome and Taiju worked on the copper smelter, Naruto would run a thread of chakra through the first crude, lumpy wires, feeling 4 hotspots of resistance or cold spots where the energy simply died. This one's grumpy, he'd say, handing a length of wire back to Chrome. The energy gets stuck and heats up. Chrome would peer at it, then exclaim, aha! An impurity bubble. We need to stir the molten copper more. It was slow, grinding work, and the pressure of Tsukasa's looming presence was a constant weight. Patrols became more frequent, their perimeter tighter. The kingdom of science was a hearth of light in a dark, watchful forest. It was Gen who returned from a scouting mission with troubling news. The narrative is shifting, he reported, his usual playful tone absent. Tsukasa isn't just calling Naruto an anomaly or corruption anymore. He's calling him the ghost of the old world. A literal specter of the poison they sought to erase. His existence is being used to radicalize the Empire of Might. They believe if he isn't purged, the petrification was for nothing. Naruto felt a cold shiver that had nothing to do with chakra. He'd been a symbol of fear and hatred before. It was a cloak he'd hoped he'd shed forever. Then we give them a new story, Kahaku stated, sharpening her spear. We show them he's human. That he helps. Stories require an audience willing to listen, Gen sighed. Fear is a louder storyteller. The ideological conflict was becoming personal. Naruto wasn't just defending his new friends, he was defending the very validity of his own existence in this timeline. This simmering tension found an unexpected outlet in the most primal of human endeavors, agriculture. Their grain stores were low, and the wild game was becoming wary. They needed to expand their farming, which meant clearing a new, rocky field. The largest obstacle was a deeply embedded, house-sized boulder. We could spend weeks breaking it with fire and water, Chrome mused. Or, Senku said, looking from the boulder to Naruto's gauntlet, then to the half-finished components of the CRM on his bench, we conduct a field test. A practical application of chakra mechanics. The plan was deceptively simple. They would use the principles they were exploring in the CRM, but on a macro scale. Senku had Naruto place several intact CCO tiles at specific, calculated points around the base of the boulder, wedged into cracks. These were connected by their crude copper wire to a central trigger tile, which Naruto would activate. The boulder is not a uniform structure, Senku lectured as they set up. It has stress points, microfractures. We're not trying to blow it up. We're using resonant chakra vibration to find its natural frequency, the note that makes it shatter itself. It was the Rasengan principle applied to geology, find the point of rotation, the point of weakness, and amplify it. The entire village gathered. This wasn't just about moving a rock, it was a demonstration of their new philosophy, the union of mysterious power and rigorous science. Naruto knelt before the central trigger tile, the wires fanning out like a metallic web. He placed his gauntlet hand over it. Just a sustained pulse, right? No big boom. A controlled, resonant input, Senku confirmed, his eyes glued to the setup. Let the science do the work. Naruto took a breath, reaching for his chakra. He pushed it into the gauntlet, but instead of releasing it, he let it flow down the copper wires, a gentle, steady current. The CCO tiles at the boulder's base began to glow, a soft, synchronized blue pulse. A low hum filled the clearing, rising in pitch. The boulder began to sing. A deep, grinding groan emanated from within its heart. Dust trickled from its seams. The hum climbed higher. The blue light from the tiles intensified. The very ground seemed to vibrate. Then, with a sound like a mountain sighing, the boulder didn't explode. It unraveled. Cracks raced across its surface in a precise, geometric web, following the paths of least resistance Senku had predicted. It shuddered, then settled, collapsing in on itself into a manageable pile of rubble and gravel. For a moment, there was only the ringing silence after the hum. Then, a collective exhale. Chrome was the first to move, darting forward to touch the gravel. It's cool. It just came apart. Resonant disaggregation, Senku said, a note of pure awe in his voice he usually reserved for groundbreaking discoveries. The energy cost was a fraction of what a brute force blast would have required. Efficiency maximized. This is the path. The villagers looked at Naruto not with fear, but with dawning, profound understanding. He wasn't a ghost or a god. He was a catalyst. A unique component in a grand, scientific process. The fear in their eyes was replaced by something else, partnership. But the light of their success cast long shadows. Unbeknownst to them, their demonstration had been observed. That evening, as they celebrated with a stew made from the first vegetables of the new field, the sentry's cry pierced the night. Intruders! At the west perimeter! They grabbed their weapons. Naruto strapped on the repaired gauntlet, the new tile a slightly different shade of blue. They rushed to the western tree line. It wasn't an attack force. It was a single figure, standing calmly in the moonlight. A young man, massive and serene, with long, pale hair and eyes that held the stillness of deep water. He wore simple hides, but his posture spoke of absolute, unconcerned power. Tsukasa Shishio. He didn't hold a weapon. He didn't need to. His presence was a wall. Senku Ishigami, Tsukasa's voice was deep, melodious, and carried an undeniable gravity. And you must be the ghost. Naruto stepped forward instinctively, placing himself between Tsukasa and the others. Every cell in his body screamed threat. This was no scout, no strategist. This was the source. The apex predator of the new world. I'm not a ghost, Naruto said, his voice steady. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Tsukasa's gaze shifted to him, and Naruto felt it like a physical weight. Those eyes assessed him, stripping away the orange jumpsuit, the gauntlet, seeing down to the core of him. Uzumaki Naruto. A name from the dust of history. You do not belong here. Your existence is a paradox. A bubble of the old world's air in the lungs of the new. He's helping us build a better world, Senku said, his tone clinical, refusing to be cowed. A world with medicine, communication, and knowledge. Something you seem hell-bent on destroying. I am preserving, Tsukasa corrected softly. The old world was a cancer of greed, corruption, and weaklings clinging to destructive technologies. It petrified itself. I am reviving only the pure, the strong, the untainted. You, Senku, are a genius, but your mind is a relic of that cancer. And you, his eyes locked back on Naruto, are its most vivid symptom. A power system that elevates the individual beyond natural limits. It is the very essence of the inequality that rotted the old world. Naruto understood now. Tsukasa wasn't just a strongman. He was an ideologue, a revolutionary with a vision as clear and rigid as Senku's, but diametrically opposed. Where Senku saw tools, Tsukasa saw toxins. Where Naruto saw the will of fire, Tsukasa saw the embers of a fire that needed to stay dead. Power isn't bad just because it exists. Naruto argued, the memory of every misunderstood Jinchuriki, every outcast shinobi, flashing in his mind. It's what you do with it. We're using it to clear fields, to protect people. A gentle use of a poisoned blade still spreads the poison, Tsukasa said. Your very nature disrupts the natural order. I watched you today. You didn't move the stone with strength or ingenuity. You used an unseen force, a cheat against reality. That is the corruption I will erase. He took a single step forward. The air grew cold. You have a choice, Tsukasa said, his voice final. Surrender yourselves. Let the old world die with dignity. Or I will purge you, and your strange energy, from this timeline myself. It was an ultimatum. And they all knew Tsukasa had the power to enforce it. Naruto's chakras surged in response to the threat, the gauntlet glowing. Kahaku tensed, spear ready. Taiju balled his fists. Senku's mind was visibly racing, calculating odds, escape vectors, weaknesses. But Tsukasa merely looked at the glowing gauntlet, his expression one of profound disappointment. You see? Your first instinct is to wield it. To fight. It is in your nature. You cannot be saved. Just as the tension was about to snap, a new sound echoed through the trees, a distant, rumbling boom, followed by shouts of alarm from the direction of Tsukasa's own camp, miles away. Tsukasa's serene mask fractured for a microsecond. A flicker of calculation, of concern for his people. Jen, who had been silently observing from the back, spoke up, his voice a lulling murmur. It seems you're pure, New World still has a few unexpected eruptions. Perhaps a volcanic vent? Or a methane pocket? The stone world is so terribly unpredictable. It was a bluff. A distraction. But it was enough. Tsukasa's eyes narrowed. He took a long, last look at Naruto, then at Senku. This is not over. The future of humanity will not be decided by ghosts and gadgets. It will be decided by strength and purity. Remember that. In a movement faster than any of them could track, he turned and melted back into the forest, silent as a shadow. The kingdom of science collectively sagged, the released pressure leaving them dizzy. Senku was already moving. He came alone to assess. Next time, he won't. The observation phase is over. The conflict phase has begun. He turned to Naruto, his expression grim. Your CRM. We don't have weeks. We have days. We need it operational. Not as a tool for farming. As a tool for survival. The weight of the situation settled on Naruto. Tsukasa saw him as the ultimate symbol of everything wrong with the past. He was no longer just a survivor or an ally. He was the focal point of the war. Back in the lab, Senku didn't return to the CRM schematics. Instead, he pulled out a new drawing. It was a simpler device, a band, meant for the forehead, with a single, large CCO tile set in the center. A regulator, Senku explained. Tsukasa's right about one thing, your power is an anomaly here. It disrupts. This, he pointed to the headband design, is a dampener. It will help mask your chakra signature, make you harder for his hunters to sense. And more importantly, it will help you regulate your own output. To keep the ghost contained until we need it. Naruto stared at the design. A headband. Like a Konoha headband, but not for pride. For control. For hiding. It felt like a step back. Like admitting Tsukasa was right. But looking at the faces of his friends, Chrome's worry, Kahaku's determination, Taiju's unwavering faith, Gen's calculating concern, Senka's desperate genius, he knew it wasn't about shame. It was about strategy. About protecting the will of fire in a world that wanted to snuff it out. Okay, Naruto said, his voice quiet with resolve. Make me the headband. And let's finish the CRM. It's time we showed Tsukasa what a ghost and some gadgets can really do. The circuit was closing. The will of the shinobi and the logic of science were now irrevocably fused. Their next encounter with the Empire of Might would not be a skirmish or a demonstration. It would be a declaration of war. Chapter 5, Frequency of War. The chakra regulation headband was a cold, intimate weight against Naruto's brow. Senku had forged the central CCO tile to a thin band of hammered copper, its inner surface lined with felted plant fibers. It didn't glow. It didn't hum. It absorbed. Its function was twofold, as Senku explained with clinical precision. First, it acts as a thermodynamic sink, dissipating the passive chakra radiation your body emits. Think of it as a muffler. Second, it provides a focal point for your conscious control, a choke point in the circuitry of your energy flow. You constrict it here, he tapped the headband, to fine-tune the output here. He pointed to the newly completed chakra regulation module, now integrated into a redesigned forearm bracer. The CRM was a masterpiece of stone world ingenuity. The bracer housed 3 rechargeable zinc copper cells, a lattice of copper wire soldered with silver from a melted down pre-petrification trinket Gen had contributed, and 6 perfect CCO tiles arranged in a hexagonal array. It looked less like a weapon and more like a primitive, sacred artifact. But it was in the final, secret component that Senku's genius truly shone. Using principles from the primitive telegraph they were still building, he had created a resonance coupler, a small, tuned chamber of hollowed wood and stretched bladder skin. It doesn't store chakra, Senku said. It stores a waveform. You imprint it with a specific frequency, a jutsu signature, and the CRM can replicate it on demand, using your chakra as the power source. One stored technique. Choose wisely. Naruto didn't hesitate. He knew the technique that defined his journey, that symbolized his unyielding will, his promise to never give up. For 3 hours, under Senku's exacting direction, he channeled chakra into the coupler, not as raw power, but as a precise, spinning, destructive harmony. He imprinted the Rasengan. Not the planet-shattering version of his later years, but the original, compact, devastating sphere of pure chakra rotation. The coupler absorbed the pattern, the bracer's tiles glowing with a captured, swirling light for a moment before fading to dormancy. The Rasengan is now Program 1, Senku announced, checking connections. Activation will draw a significant charge from the batteries and a substantial portion of your own reserves. It is a single-shot weapon. Do not waste it. The headband made the world feel duller. Colors were muted. The vibrant hum of life he'd always subconsciously sensed was gone, replaced by a sterile silence. It was like losing a sense. But he understood its necessity. He was a beacon in the dark, and Tsukasa's hunters were closing in. They came not with a frontal assault, but with a siege of silence. Over the next 2 days, their world shrank. Foragers returned with tales of eerie quiet in the woods. Lookouts spotted fleeting shadows that vanished before an arrow could be knocked. Their fishing traps were found smashed, not by animals, but by sharp stones. The Empire of Might was tightening a noose, using fear and isolation as their primary weapons. Morale, that intangible resource Naruto had always been able to bolster, began to dip. The villagers, who had seen Naruto as a protector, now saw the fear he attracted. Whispers started, barely audible. Maybe Tsukasa is right. Maybe the old powers do bring trouble. Naruto heard them. The headband couldn't mute the ache they caused. It was Gen who devised the counter-strategy. They waged psychological war. We counter with psychological theater. We must turn your ghost into a guardian spirit. We need a spectacle. The opportunity came with the weather. A massive storm system gathered on the horizon, promising torrential rain and howling winds. Senku saw not danger, but opportunity. The storm will mask our movements, our sounds. And it will provide cover for a demonstration. The plan was audacious. They would not wait to be strangled. They would strike at one of Tsukasa's forward observation posts, a known camp in a high cliff cave. But not to kill. To deliver a message. We used the storm and the CRM to create an effect they cannot explain with their pure strength ideology, Senku said, his eyes gleaming with strategic fire. We show them that science and chakra together can command the very elements. The night of the storm was apocalyptic. Rain fell in sheets, and wind screamed through the canyon like a dying god. Naruto, Kahaku, and Chrome formed the strike team. Naruto wore the headband and the CRM bracer under a waterproof sealskin cloak. Kahaku was their guide and close-in protector. Chrome carried the payload, a ceramic pot sealed with wax, filled with a mixture of powdered magnesium, saltpeter, and crushed CCO dust, Senku's first attempt at a chakra-reactive flare. The climb to the cliff cave was treacherous, the rock slick and treacherous. Naruto, using minuscule chakra boosts to his grip and footing, led the way, the headband helping him maintain a steady, low-output trickle. They could see the glow of a fire from the cave mouth, hear the faint echoes of voices swallowed by the wind. They positioned themselves on an outcrop directly above the cave entrance. The plan was simple in theory. Chrome would light and hurl the flare into the storm above the cave. Naruto would then hit the falling, burning mixture with a precisely modulated chakra pulse from the CRM, aiming not for destruction, but for ionization, using the energy to superheat the air and create a localized, terrifying lightning strike. It was science imitating the grandest of ninjutsu. Ready, Chrome hissed, shielding a tinderbox with his body. He lit the fuse, stood, and hurled the pot in a high arc into the raging blackness above the cave. Naruto focused. He deactivated the headband's muffler for a single, focused moment. The world roared back into vibrant, chaotic life, the raging chakra of the storm, the tiny beacon of the burning fuse. He raised his bracered arm, the tiles glowing blue through the cloak. He didn't access the stored Rasengan. He used the CRM's waveguide to shape a thin, piercing lance of chakra vibration, tuned to the frequency Senku had calculated. He fired. A visible beam of shimmering distortion, faintly blue, lanced from his fist into the storm. It struck the falling, now flaring pot. The result was beyond their expectations. K.A. boom. A peal of thunder, too sharp, too close, detonated right above the cave. A blinding, forked branch of green-tinged lightning seared the sky, striking the cliff face just beside the cave mouth with a deafening crack. Stone shattered and rained down. The world turned white, then black, then white again with afterimages. From the cave, they heard shouts of pure, unadulterated terror. Naruto quickly re-engaged the headband, the world dulling again. He was panting, the single shot had drained one of the CRM's 3 batteries completely and left him lightheaded. Message delivered, Kahaku whispered, awe in her voice. Let's go. They retreated into the howling storm, leaving behind a camp of terrified warriors who had just witnessed what appeared to be a vengeful spirit calling down hellfire. The effect was instantaneous and electric. Within 2 days, the Empire of Might's covert pressure vanished. The shadows left the woods. The siege was broken. In the kingdom of science, the whispers changed. Did you hear? Naruto commanded the lightning. He scared Tsukasa's men away. He was no longer a ghost. He was a force of nature on their side. But Naruto felt no triumph. He saw the fear in the eyes of Tsukasa's men in that flash of light. It was the same fear Konoha had once held for him. He had traded one form of isolation for another, more powerful one. He was becoming a legend, and legends are not people you share stew with. Senku, analyzing the data, was ecstatic. The chakra-reactive compound worked. The ionization principle is valid. We can refine this. We can create controlled electrical discharge. 10 billion%. Their success, however, had a cost. They had revealed a fraction of their capability. And they had provoked not a beast, but a philosopher king who saw their demonstration not as a trick, but as a profound heresy. 3 days after the storm, the response came. It was not an army. It was a single arrow, fired from an impossible distance into the very center of the village clearing. It carried no message. Tied to its shaft was a small, carved stone figurine. It was crudely made, but unmistakable, a figure in an approximation of an orange jumpsuit, its head shattered off. The meaning was clear. A declaration of extermination. And with the figurine came a tangible, shilling change. The next person they revived from stone, a young man they'd hoped would be another ally, awoke, took one look at Naruto, screamed ghost, and fled into the forest, never to be seen again. Tsukasa's narrative was taking root. The fear was spreading. "We can't keep running or reacting," Naruto said that night, staring at the headless figurine. The headband felt heavier than ever. "We have to take the fight to him. Not to kill him. To talk to him. To make him see." "He does not want to see," Jen said quietly. "He wants to erase." "Then we make an argument he can't ignore," Senku stated. He unrolled a larger schematic. It was not for a tool or a weapon. It was a machine. A large, wheel chassis with a massive, bowl-shaped resonator made of interlocking CCO tiles and copper wire, connected to a bank of sulfuric acid batteries. The CRM was a prototype. "This is an amplifier. We call it the Aegis resonator," he explained. The machine would not attack. It would create a standing chakra field, a dome of concentrated, vibrating energy. Within it, Naruto's powers would be amplified, his control magnified. Outside it, the field would disrupt and dampen physical force, a perfect counter to Tsukasa's supreme physical might. "It's a defensive argument," Senku said. "We cannot match his empire's strength head-on. So we create a space his strength cannot touch. A space where science and chakra reign. We invite him in. And we show him what the future he's trying to destroy actually looks like." It was a gamble of monumental proportions. Building the Aegis would consume all their resources, leave them vulnerable for weeks. It was a bet that they could finish it before Tsukasa decided to crush them with overwhelming force. Naruto looked around the circle, at Senku's determined genius, Chrome's faithful curiosity, Kahaku's unwavering resolve, Taiju's boundless strength, Jin's cunning support. They were betting everything on him. On the union of his world and theirs. He thought of Tsukasa's words. A bubble of the old world's air. Maybe that's what they were. But bubbles could contain entire worlds. They could reflect light in beautiful ways. They could protect fragile things. "Let's build it," Naruto said, his voice filled with a quiet conviction that silenced the last of the doubters. "Let's build our bubble. And let's make it so bright, he has to see what's inside." The kingdom of science shifted into a war footing of a different kind. The forge blazed day and night, hammering copper sheets. The acid vats bubbled, producing the vital electrolyte. Chrome and a team mined CCO tiles with desperate urgency. Naruto worked alongside them, his chakra now a precise tool for sensing rich veins, the headband a constant, tight reminder of control. During a rare break, as Naruto helped Taiju haul a massive copper sheet, Taiju spoke, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "You know, Naruto, back in the old world, I was never special. Just a guy with a strong back and a loud voice. But Senku saw something in me. And now, you see something in all of us. You're fighting to protect this weird, loud, science-loving family. That's not a ghost. That's a big brother." Naruto stopped, the words hitting him with more force than any Rasengan. A family. He'd found another one, against all odds, at the end of time. He grinned, the old, sunny grin breaking through the weight of the headband. "Yeah? Well, this big brother is gonna need your strong back to carry this sheet, so stop slacking off, believe it." They laughed, the sound carrying over the clang of hammers. Weeks bled into each other. The Aegis resonator took shape in the heart of the village, a strange, beautiful, and terrifying monument. It looked like a giant, mechanical flower made of blue stone and copper, waiting to bloom. Then, the scouts reported. Tsukasa was on the move. Not with a small force. He was coming with the core of his empire of might. 30 of his strongest, most fanatical warriors. He was done with sieges and messages. He was coming for a final, conclusive purge. They had 2 days. The final night was spent in tense, silent preparation. The Aegis was operational, but untested at full scale. Naruto stood before it, the headband on his brow, the CRM bracer on his arm. Senku made the final connections, his hands steady. "The field will draw power directly from you, filtered and amplified through the machine," Senku said. "It will be a massive drain. You'll be the heart of the bubble. If your heart stops, the bubble pops." "It won't," Naruto promised. As dawn broke on the day of battle, the kingdom of science did not hide. They arrayed themselves before the Aegis resonator. Farmers held sharpened scythes. Craftsmen held hammers. They were few. They were terrified. But they stood. From the forest line, Tsukasa emerged. He walked ahead of his 30 warriors, a sculpted god of the new age. His eyes swept over the pathetic defensive line, over the strange machine, and finally settled on Naruto. You build a shrine to your corruption, Tsukasa said, his voice carrying easily in the morning quiet. It changes nothing. Strength and purity will always cleanse weakness and poison. Naruto stepped forward, leaving the safety of his friends. He met Tsukasa in the open ground between the forest and the Aegis. You talk about purity, Naruto said, his voice loud and clear. But your world is built on killing anyone who's different. You talk about strength, but you're afraid of a future you can't control. That's not strength. That's fear. I've known a lot of people ruled by fear. It never leads anywhere good. Tsukasa's expression remained serene. And you offer chaos. Mystery. The same shadows that hid the monsters of the old world. I offer a choice, Naruto said. He raised his bracered arm. Behind him, Senku gave a signal. Chrome and Taiju turned a massive crank. The Aegis resonator hummed to life. The CCO tiles glowed with an intense, brilliant blue. A low thrumming note, deeper than sound, vibrated through the ground. The air above the machine shimmered, and a dome of visible, rippling energy like a heat haze made solid expanded outward, passing over Naruto and enveloping the entire village clearing. Inside the dome, the light seemed sharper, the air crisper. Naruto felt a surge of connection, as if the very atmosphere was an extension of his will. The headband's restriction vanished. Here, he was in perfect harmony. Outside the dome, Tsukasa's warriors flinched. The grass at the very edge of the field seemed to wilt, the vibrant green fading as if sapped. This is our argument, Naruto said, his form beginning to glow with a faint, golden chakra haze within the amplified field. A place where knowledge protects. Where strange powers build instead of destroy. You want to erase the past? Fine. But we're not the past. We're the future. And you're welcome to come in and see it. He extended an open hand, not in challenge, but in invitation, across the threshold of shimmering energy. Tsukasa looked at the dome, at the glowing Naruto, at the defiant, terrified faces of the villagers behind their line of science. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. This was not a fight against a man or a machine. It was a fight against an idea, given form and power. He took a step forward, not toward Naruto, but toward the edge of the shimmering dome. The ultimate test was about to begin. The battle of ideologies had reached its frequency, and the stone world would resonate with the outcome forever. Chapter 6, The Aegis Argument. The world held its breath at the threshold of the shimmering dome. Inside, the air hummed with a harmonic promise, a silent orchestra of amplified chakra. Outside, the primal stillness of Tsukasa's conviction reigned. Tsukasa's eyes, pale and depthless as a winter sky, studied the energy field. He saw not a shield, but a manifestation of the very corruption he sought to eradicate, a bubble of artificial reality, a defiance of the natural order his pure, strong world was meant to embody. He took another step, his bare foot sinking into the softened earth at the very edge of the distortion. An argument made of light and noise, he said, his voice carrying a quiet, terrible finality. It is still an argument that can be broken. He didn't rush. He simply leaned forward and placed a single, open palm against the shimmering wall of the Aegis field. The contact sent a visible shudder through the dome. The harmonious hum gained a discordant strain, a screeching feedback that made the villagers clap their hands over their ears. The CCO tiles of the Aegis resonator flared, then dimmed erratically. Naruto, standing at the heart of the field, gasped. It felt like a mountain had been placed directly on his chakra coils. The energy drain spiked violently. Tsukasa wasn't attacking with force, he was testing the structure of the argument itself, probing for a flaw in the science, a weakness in the chakra that powered it. He's overloading the resonance frequency. Senku shouted from behind the machine, his hands flying over copper connections. He's introducing chaotic physical vibration, pure, undirected kinetic energy, as a dissonant signal. Naruto, you have to stabilize the waveform. Match his frequency and cancel it out. Match his frequency. It wasn't about overpowering Tsukasa. It was about understanding him. Naruto closed his eyes within the glowing field, reaching out with his senses. He felt the immense, quiet power of Tsukasa's touch not as a blast, but as a deep, tectonic pressure, steady and unyielding. It was the frequency of absolute, unshakable belief. Naruto drew on his own core, not on rage or desperation, but on the stubborn, enduring optimism that was his ninja way. He pushed that feeling into the Aegis field, not as a counterattack, but as a harmonizing tone. A belief in people, in connection, in a messy, hopeful future. The screeching feedback softened, melting into a deep, throbbing pulse. The dome stabilized, its light steadying. Tsukasa's hand remained pressed against it, but now it seemed less like he was breaking it and more like he was listening. His eyebrows lifted a fraction of a millimeter. Interesting. He withdrew his hand. The dome hummed cleanly once more. For a long moment, he simply observed. Then he turned to his warriors, who stood poised like arrows at a drawn bowstring. Hold. A ripple of confusion went through their ranks, but not a single one disobeyed. Tsukasa turned back to Naruto. Your shield is principled. It defends. I respect defense. But a principle that only defends is incomplete. It does not build the future, it merely preserves a moment. He raised his voice, addressing not just Naruto, but Senku and the entire kingdom behind the light. I will enter your argument. I will see the world you would build inside this bubble. And then, I will break it from the inside, and you will see the futility of clinging to ghosts. He took a step forward, crossing the threshold. The effect was immediate and profound. As Tsukasa passed through the Aegis field, the vibrant, amplified energy recoiled from him. The light dimmed where he stood. The grass beneath his feet didn't just wilt, it turned to gray ash in a perfect circle around him. He was a null zone, a walking oblivion in the heart of their scientific chakra harmony. The very air seemed to thin, becoming harder to breathe for those near him. He was inside. And his presence was a suffocating weight. Now, Tsukasa said, his gaze sweeping over their crude huts, the lab, the garden, the faces of its people. Show me this better future. It was Senku who stepped forward, his posture defiantly straight. Gladly. Chrome. Chrome, trembling but determined, brought forward a series of objects on a mat. A clay pot of sulfa drug antibiotic paste. A pair of crystal-clear eyeglasses ground from quartz. A small, working model of a water pump. The first lump of iron they had smelted. These aren't weapons, Chrome said, his voice shaking. They're tools. Medicine. Sight. Clean water. Strength to build. Tsukasa examined each item with detached curiosity. He held the glasses to the light. To correct the weaknesses of the body. To prolong the existence of the unfit. He put them down. Your iron will become plows. And then swords. Your medicine will save the weak, who will then breed more weakness. You are not eliminating the poison of the old world, you are brewing a more subtle strain of it. That's not true. Kahaku snapped, her spear held tight. We're saving lives. Everyone's life. Not just the strong ones you pick. And in doing so, Tsukasa said, turning his placid gaze on her, you ensure that the suffering, the greed, the endless, pathetic struggle that defined humanity will begin all over again. True peace, true purity, requires a hard reset. A world without the tools that create dependency and inequality. A world of just you and people who agree with you, you mean, Naruto said, walking to stand beside Senku. The golden haze around him flickered, pushed back by Tsukasa's nullifying presence. I've met guys like you. You don't want peace. You want a world that's quiet because you've silenced everyone else. For the first time, a spark of something hot glinted in Tsukasa's eyes. You, who carry a power that elevates you above all others, speak to me of equality? You are the ultimate argument for my cause. You are a natural disaster given human form. Before Naruto could retort, a commotion erupted at the village edge. One of the older revived villagers, a man with a chronic cough they'd been treating with the sulfa paste, stumbled forward, pointing a trembling finger at Tsukasa. It's him. I remember from the news. The champion. The genius. He's Tsukasa Shishio. The man's face was a mask of awe and terror. The old world's recognition had pierced the Stone Ages. Tsukasa's nullifying aura seemed to swell with a cold satisfaction. See? The past clings like a sickness. Even petrified, its memories, its hierarchies, its worship, return. He looked at the coughing man. In my world, you would have been left in stone. Your weakness ended. Here, you live to cough, to fear, to remember your betters. Is this your mercy? The man crumpled to his knees, weeping in confused shame. Naruto felt a fury burn through him, hot and clean. This was Tsukasa's true power, not his strength, but his ability to twist hope into despair, compassion into a flaw. He was winning the ideological battle without throwing a single punch. Senku, however, was staring at the weeping man, then at Tsukasa, his mind visibly racing at 10 billion thoughts per second. He saw something. A connection. Recognition, Senku muttered, then louder. Recognition. That's it. Tsukasa. You're not trying to erase the old world because it was corrupt. You're trying to erase it because it recognized you. It put you on a pedestal. It made you a champion, a genius, a singular phenomenon. You hated the world that created that inequality, and now you're building one where you are the sole, defining standard. Your purity is just the ultimate narcissism. The clearing went utterly silent. Even the hum of the Aegis seemed to mute itself. Tsukasa's serene mask shattered. His eyes widened, then narrowed into slits of pure, icy rage. The null zone around him pulsed, expanding violently. The Aegis field groaned, and two of the CCO tiles on the resonator cracked with sounds like gunshots. The villagers cried out, stumbling back from the wave of oppressive emptiness. You dare, Tsukasa whispered, the words carrying the weight of continental plates grinding together. You, who play with the leavings of that world, dare to psychoanalyze me? My reasons are pure. My vision is clear. Your vision is a mirror, Senku shot back, unflinching. And all you want to see in it is your own reflection, with no one else's face to complicate the view. Tsukasa moved. It was not the blinding speed he was capable of, but a deliberate, inevitable stride toward Senku. The ground seemed to harden to stone under his feet with each step. The Aegis field pushed against him, screeching in protest, draining Naruto's chakra at a catastrophic rate, but it could not stop him. He was a force of nature walking. Kahaku leaped, her spear a silver flash. Tsukasa didn't even look. His hand snapped out, caught the spearhead an inch from his temple, and squeezed. The stone point disintegrated into powder. He backhanded the shaft, and Kahaku was hurled through the air like a leaf, crashing into the lab hut with a crunch of breaking wood. Taiju roared, charging like a bull. Tsukasa pivoted, planted a hand on Taiju's chest, and stopped the massive charge dead. With a gentle push, Taiju was sent flying backward, tumbling head over heels. Stop! Naruto yelled, pouring more chakra into the Aegis, trying to reinforce it, to create a barrier between Tsukasa and Senku. The field condensed, becoming a visible wall of rippling gold and blue between them. Tsukasa finally looked at Naruto. You are the ghost. But he is the necromancer. I will unmake his science first. He drew back his fist. It was a simple motion. There was no wind-up, no fanfare. It was the most physically perfect punch Naruto had ever seen, every muscle, every tendon aligned into a single, ultimate expression of force. He aimed it not at Naruto, not at the Aegis field, but at the ground directly between himself and Senku. The punch landed. Thoom. The sound was not an explosion, but an implosion of reality. The earth did not erupt. It sank. A perfect, hemispherical crater 3 meters wide appeared instantly, the dirt and stone within it compressed into a dense, vitrified glass. The shockwave was a visible ring of distorted air that hit the Aegis field. The field held for a microsecond, then shattered like glass. The backlash was catastrophic. The Aegis resonator exploded outward in a shower of blue shrapnel and twisted copper. The concussive wave knocked everyone in the village off their feet. Naruto was thrown backward, the CRM bracer on his arm overloading, its tiles going dark, one battery rupturing and leaking acid that burned his skin. Silence, ringing and absolute, filled the clearing, broken only by the tinkle of falling stone and the moans of the injured. Tsukasa stood in the center of his self-made crater, untouched, unblemished. He looked at Senku, who was struggling to rise, blood trickling from his ear from the shockwave. Your argument, Tsukasa said, is concluded. He took a step toward the fallen scientist. Naruto pushed himself up. His head was ringing, his chakra reserve scraping the bottom of the well, his arm burned. The headband was cracked. The CRM was dead. The Aegis was dust. He had one thing left. One stored pattern. One shot. He didn't have the chakra to form a Rasengan in his hand. But the CRM's resonance coupler still held the imprint. It was damaged, its waveform corrupted, but the pattern was there. As Tsukasa took another step, Naruto did not aim for him. He knew a direct attack would be intercepted, shrugged off. He aimed for the vitrified glass at the bottom of the crater Tsukasa had made. He activated the ruined CRM, forcing every last drop of his chakra, every ounce of his will, into the corrupted, stored technique. The bracer sparked, the cracked CCO tile glowing a sickly, unstable purple. A sphere of chakra, not blue, not golden, but a chaotic, swirling violet, materialized not in his hand, but in the air above the crater. It was a malformed, shrieking thing, a Rasengan's deranged cousin. It wobbled erratically. Tsukasa paused, glancing at it with mild curiosity. A final, unstable spark. Not a spark, Naruto gritted out, blood dripping from his nose from the strain. A tuning fork. He brought his hands together in a single, desperate clap, a seal of focus. The unstable violet Rasengan dropped from the air and struck the vitrified glass at the crater's bottom. It didn't explode. It resonated. The glass, forged by Tsukasa's ultimate force, had a perfect, crystalline structure. The corrupted Rasengan, a waveform of pure, chaotic rotation, found its frequency. Crack. A sound beyond hearing tore through the clearing. The vitrified glass did not shatter into pieces. It turned into a cloud of ultrafine, monomolecular dust. But more importantly, the resonant vibration shot back up the vector of the force that created the glass. It traveled through the ground, through the air, through the very memory of the punch. It hit Tsukasa. Not with physical force, but with a wave of perfect, mirrored feedback, the exact, amplified echo of his own ultimate strike, translated into a high-frequency vibration that bypassed muscle and bone to rattle the very cells of his body. For the first time, Tsukasa Shishio staggered. He didn't cry out. He didn't fall. But his knees bent. A single, tiny trickle of blood escaped the corner of his perfect mouth. His eyes, wide with something beyond pain, with sheer, unprecedented surprise, locked onto Naruto. The corrupted Rasengan dissipated. The dust settled. Naruto collapsed to his hands and knees, utterly drained, his chakra coils shrieking in emptiness. Silence. Tsukasa slowly straightened. He wiped the blood from his lip, looking at the red smear on his thumb as if it were a fascinating artifact from another dimension. He looked from it to Naruto, who was struggling just to breathe. You, Tsukasa began, his voice uncharacteristically halting. You used my own strength, as a component of your technique. You didn't meet force with force. You repurposed it. He took a long, slow breath, his gaze sweeping the devastation, the destroyed Aegis, the injured villagers, the shattered but alive Senku, the exhausted, defiant Naruto. He saw not a clean victory, but a messy, costly stalemate bought with ingenuity and desperate sacrifice. A world that can do that, he murmured, almost to himself. A world where strength can be turned, not just opposed, that is not the stagnant, corrupt world I remember. That is, something new. He looked at his warriors, who stood stunned at the forest's edge, having witnessed their invincible leader not just challenged, but made to bleed by a ghost and a broken machine. We withdraw, Tsukasa said, his voice regaining its command, but lacking its finality. Withdraw, one of his captains asked, incredulous. The argument, Tsukasa said, his eyes resting once more on Naruto, is not concluded. It is adjourned. There are variables I did not calculate. He turned and began walking back toward the forest, his steps slower, more thoughtful. Do not revive anyone else until I have considered this new data. And just like that, the Empire of Might melted back into the trees, leaving behind a broken village, a shattered machine, and a profound, trembling silence. Hours later, as they tended to the wounded and surveyed the damage, Senku limped over to where Naruto sat, having his burned arm treated by chrome. You used the resonance principle on the result of his attack, not the attack itself, Senku said, awe in his exhausted voice. 10 billion% insane. And brilliant. You didn't win. But you changed the equation. Naruto looked up, his blue eyes hollow with exhaustion but alight with a hard-won fire. He saw something he couldn't just smash. Maybe that's enough for now. Gen approached, his face serious. He is not converted. He is intrigued. And a curious Tsukasa is almost more dangerous than a certain one. But it is a chance. We have bought time. And we have proven that his purity cannot simply erase us. As night fell on the battered but unbroken kingdom of science, Naruto looked at the stars. He hadn't saved the day with a heroic Rasengan. He'd survived it with a clever, desperate trick born of science and shinobi wit. The war wasn't over. But the terms had changed. They were no longer just defending against an inevitable purge. They had forced a question into the mind of a man who thought he had all the answers. What would Tsukasa Shishio do with a question? The next phase of the Stone World saga would be forged in the silence of that uncertain retreat. The ghost and the scientist had not triumphed, but they had, against all odds, begun a conversation. Chapter 7, The Silent Forge. The silence after Tsukasa's withdrawal was not peaceful. It was the taut, humming quiet of a plucked bowstring, vibrating with unspent energy. The kingdom of science was a village of walking wounded, their greatest creation a heap of glittering blue shards and twisted copper. Yet, in the eyes of its people, a new kind of light had been kindled, a hard, flinty spark of defiance that hadn't been there before. They had bled the invincible. They had made a god blink. Naruto's recovery was slow. The chakra backlash from overloading the corrupted CRM and shattering the Aegis had left his internal energy system frayed, like a muscle torn from the bone. Senku diagnosed it as chakra pathway microfibrillation. Basically, you short-circuited yourself, he said, applying a poultice of crushed herbs and cooled ash to Naruto's scorched arm. Your energy system isn't just depleted, it's distrustful. It's resisting your call. It was a strange, hollow feeling. The ever-present well of power he'd taken for granted was now a locked door. He could feel it, a vast, dormant ocean behind a dam of his own making, but he could only draw the merest trickle. For the first time since he was a child failing the Academy's clone technique, Naruto Uzumaki felt powerless. He threw himself into physical labor. It was the only language his frustrated body still understood. He helped Taiju clear the wreckage of the Aegis, sorting salvageable CCO fragments from useless dust. He hauled stones to reinforce the damaged lab hut. He worked until his muscles screamed and his empty chakra coils ached with a different, more honest pain. He saw the looks from the villagers. Not fear anymore, but a worried reverence. They had seen him stand against the apocalypse. Now they saw him struggling to lift a log Taiju could manage alone. The dissonance was confusing for them, and isolating for him. It was Kahaku who broke through. She found him one evening, staring blankly at the river, trying and failing to make the water ripple with a chakra-enhanced breath. "You're trying to run before you can walk," she stated, dropping a practice spear beside him. "Your chakra is broken." "So what?" "My father was the strongest warrior in the village until a fall shattered his leg. He never walked the same again. But he learned to throw a spear sitting down. He taught me everything I know from a straw mat." Naruto looked at the spear, then at her. "I'm not good at sitting down." "Then stand," she said, picking up the spear and tossing him a roughly carved wooden sword. "But fight without it. Fight like you have nothing. Because right now, you do." They sparred. It was humiliating. Kahaku, without a drop of chakra, moved like quicksilver. Naruto, relying on atrophied taijutsu instincts and a body that felt leaden, was slow, predictable. She disarmed him, tripped him, and pressed the blunt spear tip to his throat a dozen times in as many minutes. Panting in the dirt, frustration a hot coal in his chest, he glared up at her. "This is pointless." "No," Kahaku said, her expression uncharacteristically soft. "This is the point. You lost a tool. Not your will. I'm showing you what your will looks like without the tool. It's stubborn. And loud. And it leaves you open on the left side every time you try a downward slash." A reluctant grin tugged at his mouth. He got up. Again. Day by day, the sparring sessions became his anchor. He began to rediscover the fundamentals: footwork, balance, the economy of motion. He started to see Kahaku's movements not as blurs, but as intentions. He learned to predict, to feint, to use his environment. He was relearning how to be a shinobi from the ground up, in a world that had no word for it. Meanwhile, Senku and Chrome were engaged in a different kind of reconstruction. The destruction of the Aegis was a treasure trove of data. Senku meticulously catalogued every cracked CCO tile, analyzing the fracture patterns. The failure wasn't in the principle, he told Chrome, who was carefully grinding a large, salvageable tile into a lens shape. It was in the material. The crystalline structure of the ore is beautiful for conduction, but brittle under sustained resonant load. We need to combine it with something that has tensile strength. We need a composite matrix. What matrix?" Chrome asked, squinting. "We weave it into something else," Senku said, his gaze drifting to the forge, where their first lump of iron Saturday, but iron is too dense, too energetically inert. "We need a fiber, something that can be impregnated with powdered CCO." Their answer came from an unexpected source, the forest itself. While foraging for medicinal moss, Chrome discovered a grove of strange, silver-barked trees he'd never seen before. Their sap was sticky and slow-drying, and their inner bark could be peeled into long, astonishingly strong fibers that shimmered with a faint, opalescent sheen. "Senku! Look at this!" Chrome rushed back, waving a strand of the fiber. It was as thin as thread but required all of Taiju's strength to snap. Senku took it, held it to the light, then had Naruto run the faintest whisper of chakra through it. The fiber glowed, a gentle, sustained white light, and grew warm, not hot. It didn't fracture. "A natural chakra-conductive polymer," Senku breathed, a feverish light in his eyes. "It doesn't amplify like CCO, but it transmits with near-perfect efficiency and handles load beautifully. 10 billion%. This is the missing link." "Chrome, what's the tree?" "Dunno. It's new." "We're calling it Yggdrasil fiber," Senku declared. "We're harvesting it. Carefully. This changes everything." The discovery sparked a new, covert project. While the village focused on rebuilding homes and replanting fields, Senku, Chrome, and a slowly recovering Naruto began working in a hidden cave near the Silvertree Grove. They called it the Silent Forge. The goal was no longer a massive, dome-shaped resonator. It was something subtler, more personal. Using the Yggdrasil fiber as a base, Senku began designing a new kind of garment, a weave. Threads of the fiber would be interlaced with strands of the strongest hemp and fine copper wire, then embedded with microscopic dust of the salvaged CCO. The Aegis was a castle wall, Senku explained, his hands flying as he worked a primitive loom he and Chrome had built. Impressive, but immobile and resource-intensive. This will be armor. A second skin that regulates, transmits, and subtly amplifies chakra. It won't let you punch through mountains, but it will help your body remember how to flow. Naruto's role was that of a living loom. As Senku and Chrome wove the fabric on the large loom, Naruto sat before a smaller frame, channeling the tiniest, steadiest stream of chakra he could manage through the individual strands as they were spun. It was an exercise in agonizing precision, a meditation on control he'd never been forced to undertake. He couldn't blast his way through this. He had to be a still, deep lake. The process was excruciatingly slow. Some days, his chakra would sputter and fail, and the fiber would dim. Other days, a sudden surge would burn out a section, forcing them to start over. But gradually, inch by painstaking inch, a fabric began to take shape. It was a dull gray, but when Naruto pushed chakra into it, it glowed with a complex, internal latticework of soft blue and white light, like a star chart woven into cloth. As they worked, they talked. Chrome asked endless questions about the old world, about jutsu, about what it felt like to run on water. Naruto found himself explaining not just the mechanics, but the philosophy, the will of fire, the bond of a team, the weight of a Hokage's promise. Chrome listened, his eyes wide, drawing parallels to the bonds of the village, to Senku's driving dream. One evening, Senku paused his work. This will of fire. It's a non-physical energy source. A morale vector. In scientific terms, it's a shared cognitive state that apparently lowers the activation energy for cooperative chakra use in your world. Here, without a large shinobi population, it's inert. But, what if it's not? What do you mean? Naruto asked, carefully guiding a thread. I mean, Senku said, his gaze intense, what if the reason your chakra is so hard to use here isn't just atmospheric resistance or a lack of ambient energy? What if a key component is social? Chakra in your world was cultivated by a culture, a shared belief system, a civilization. You're trying to run a civilization-scale software on a single, isolated hardware. You're lonely, Naruto. The words landed with the weight of truth. He was lonely. He missed the constant, buzzing network of Konoha, the thousand threads of chakra, emotion, and shared purpose. Here, he was a single, bright, disconnected node. So what do we do? Naruto asked quietly. Build a civilization? Senku's grin was sharp. We're already building one. And you're not just a part of it. You're becoming its nervous system. Weeks passed. The first garment from the Silent Forge was completed, a simple, sleeveless undershirt. Naruto put it on. It fit snugly, the fabric cool and strangely weightless. He closed his eyes and reached for his chakra. The difference was instantaneous and profound. The resistance was still there, but it was organized. The shirt didn't amplify his power, it canalized it. His trickle of chakra was no longer a feeble seep but a directed, purposeful stream. The frayed, painful feeling in his coil smoothed into a clean, if narrow, flow. He focused on his feet, and for the first time in weeks, he felt the familiar buoyancy. He took a step up the side of the cave wall. He held it for 3 seconds before slipping, but the control was there. It was back. He wasn't healed. But he was connected. The shirt was a scaffold for his wounded power. It works, he said, his voice thick with a relief so deep it felt like grief. Phase 1 complete, Senku nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. Now we scale. We weave more. Not just for you. This was the second, secret purpose of the Silent Forge. Not to recreate a one-man army, but to create a network. If chakra had a social component, then they would build a society that could use it. They began weaving smaller patches, armbands, headbands made from the composite fabric. These wouldn't grant anyone chakra, but Senku theorized that for those living and working in close proximity to Naruto, wearing the material might help them subconsciously synchronize with his energy field, improving coordination, reaction times, and even morale, a subtle, scientific will of fire effect. They distributed the first armbands to the core team, Senku, Chrome, Kahaku, Taiju, and general the effects were subtle but noticeable. Kahaku found her already keen reflexes sharpen further. Chrome's intuition for materials and reactions felt more guided. Taiju reported feeling a warm, focused buzz during heavy labor. Jen simply remarked that the village's emotional frequency had become easier to read and influence. They were weaving themselves together, literally and energetically. It was during this fragile period of clandestine rebuilding that the outside world intruded again. Not with Tsukasa's force, but with a consequence of their earlier battle. A lone traveler, a revived man from a distant tribe who had heard rumors of the lightning ghost and the kingdom of machines, stumbled into their territory. He was sick, feverish, coughing blood, a victim of an ammonia strain their sulfa drugs could barely touch. He was also, as Jen quickly discerned, a spy. His fear of Naruto was real, but his sickness was a cover to get inside their walls. They had a choice. Turn him away, proving Tsukasa's point that they were an exclusive, suspicious cult. Or help him, and risk him reporting their weakened state and strange new projects. Senku didn't hesitate. We treat him. Science and medicine have no borders. That's the argument. Naruto agreed. He went to the quarantine hut where the man shivered. The man recoiled, seeing the famous orange, the now calm blue eyes. Don't curse me, the man begged. I'm not gonna curse you, Naruto said, kneeling beside his pallet. I'm gonna help. Believe it. He placed a hand on the man's fevered brow, not with chakra, but with simple human contact. He then activated the faintest trickle of chakra, filtered and smoothed by his undershirt, pushing not for healing, he had no medical ninjutsu, but for calm. A gentle, resonant peace, like the still center of a storm. The man's terrified trembling slowed. His ragged breaths deepened. He looked at Naruto, confusion battling with the undeniable, soothing warmth spreading from that touch. Over the next days, as Senku and Krone worked on a stronger antibiotic, Naruto visited, offering that same calm. He spoke not of battles or science, but of simple things, the taste of broth, the sound of the river, the stubbornness of hope. The man, whose name was Kato, recovered. On the day he was set to leave, healthy and clear-eyed, he looked at Naruto with an expression utterly different from the fear he'd arrived with. "You're not a ghost," Kato said quietly. "You're just a man. A very strange, very loud man who shares his warmth." He looked around at the recovering village, at the people working together. "This place, it's not what they say." "What do they say?" Jen asked smoothly, appearing as if from nowhere. "That it's a den of old-world demons," Kato admitted. "But it feels more alive than the strong, silent places." He bowed clumsily. "I will tell them I saw nothing but kindness. It is all I can repay." He left, a potential threat turned into a reluctant, confused ambassador. After he was gone, Jen turned to Naruto. "You didn't use a Rasengan. You used a presence. That may be a more powerful weapon in this war than any energy blast." Naruto looked at his hands, clad in the faintly gleaming fabric of his undershirt. He had spent weeks mourning his lost power, rebuilding it as a scientific tool. But perhaps his greatest strength had never been the Ninetales or the Rasengan. Perhaps it was the same thing that had saved Konoha time and again, his unkillable, connective humanity. In the Silent Forge, they weren't just weaving cloth and chakra. They were weaving a new story. One where the ghost became a guardian, where science built not walls but bridges, and where the strongest argument wasn't force, but the simple, undeniable warmth of a shared fire in the long, cold night of the stone world. The fabric of their future was on the loom. And for the first time since he'd awoken in this ancient, lonely world, Naruto Uzumaki felt the threads of his old life and his new one beginning to knot together into something unbreakable.